Hi everyone, it's good to get back to the YouTube channel. I've been away for a while, I've been very busy with work and other things, but I thought I'd get back to it now and try something a bit new. I'm going to try recording some Blitz games and then analyzing them later with Fritz and putting the two videos together so we can have a Blitz game and then deeper analysis with Fritz to see what was really going on and what was missed and all that kind of thing. Which, of course, in Blitz is very common, you know, to miss moves, and you know, but it's also true in long games, and it's sometimes through analysis of those, even Blitz games, that you find new ideas and traps or whatever in chess. And there's always lots to be had. I'd also like to remind everyone about Killigar Chess, which is still going very well. As you can see here, here's the last checkmate. Alba beat Tigu. And interesting checkmate there. But yeah, come and have a look and join us. Everyone's playing the Malkovich games and it's all going very well. So we head over to Chess Cube anyway. And see if we can have a Blitz game. Let's see now. 5 minutes plus 3 seconds. Okay. Yeah, I haven't done live chess before, so be interesting to see how this goes, and you know, if anyone wants to leave comments or that kind of thing about moves I might have missed or my opponent might have missed, or comments about the opening or about the game in general, then you know, please feel free, and we can, you know, discuss everything and go through it all. King's Crusher is a great player, as we all know, and he plays very interesting games and openings and all that kind of thing, and so I'm interested to see if I can aspire to something similar. I usually play for 100 qubits, and I actually have it set so I'm guaranteed a weaker opponent, because I was trying to build up my my qubits. Because an annoying thing with Chess Cube is that you start each day with 60 qubits, and if you lose those 60 qubits in 3 games, then you can't play any more games on the website for 24 hours. You know, which is annoying. So what I did was I built up my qubits, and now I've got about 14,000, and so I always play for 100 anyway, and I always, you know, in order to build up my qubits, I had it set to play weaker players, and but obviously that's not good. We want to see an interesting game. Sometimes, you know, below 1900 players don't know the openings in as much depth as higher rated players. So hopefully someone will accept before long. It's only 7 o'clock in the evening. Should be lots of people online. It's actually one of those websites where it takes a while for people to accept your games. On chess.com and the ICC, which I think is the one where King's Crusher plays, they accept almost immediately. Well, especially on chess.com, it's almost instantaneous, which is good. I'm hopefully going to have an account with the ICC soon, and may even get to play King's Crusher, which would be interesting. Hopefully someone's going to accept before long, or this is going to be a very long introduction. I may as well have a cigarette while we wait. No one wants to play Blitz. What's the story? Here we go. Okay, Clamu, 1834. Alright, we can start with e4. Modern defense. Okay, we can transpose to King's Indian. God willing, yes. e6. It's unusual, weakening on the dark squares. What's he trying to achieve? Probably knight e7. So I play bishop g5. If he plays knight e7. No, okay. He's going for the hippo setup. Maybe c5 or e5 now. Yeah, so he's going to play bishop e7 and knight e7 for a solid structure. But, you know, extremely passive. h6, okay. Is there any immediate breakthrough move? Don't think so. Probably play for e5. If he's not going to play knight f6, I'll play bishop e3. So we'll just play a semi-waiting move to see if he plays knight e7 or knight f6. Okay. Alright, well I play h3 if he plays knight f6. Okay. So now we can castle. Play f5 though. Okay. So now we need to find the breakthrough move or breakthrough, you know, strategy. And relight our cigarette. Okay, well we can play for queenside activity, seeing as he can't castle yet. Okay, so it's going for pressure against e4. No biggie. And we can play d5 now. Yeah. d5 looks good. Okay, e5. Okay, there's no danger in this because the light square bishop's on b7. This is no sacks or any of that nonsense. He still can't castle. Maybe play knight h5 and f5. Okay, guess maybe we're going to try and castle queenside, obviously. So we discourage that now immediately. And then press c5 anyway. g5, okay. So g4 is a semi-threat. Just to be annoying, really. Sacks aren't any use just yet. I don't think so. And anyway, c5 comes with tempo because of the threat of c6. So c5 takes, and attacking the bishop, or the knight, sorry. Is there anything to be gained through that? Not really. Although the D file could be important there. I'm not overly concerned about g4. Although knight h2 is kind of tempting. Yeah, okay. Bit of prophylaxis before we take decisive action. Okay. Unusual pawn sack. So what's he got? G file. That's about it. Okay. So I can take, and I can play bishop g5. Probably important to do that before he plays rook g8. Play that anyway. After takes bishop g5. Bishop takes g5, queen takes g5, rook g8 because the knight on e7 is covering it. Although he's dropping the h pawn if he does that. carry on with c5 here, I think. It looks kind of dangerous to allow him any play here. And this H pawn is obviously weak. Okay, so now he's castled. This is even more dangerous. He might have a sack on d5 later, but nothing serious at the moment. Although I'm just dropping a pawn with my bishop on g5, like in Egypt. Okay. Okay, well the c file is staying closed. We can try and exchange sack. Yeah, see, he's threatening queen h3. So really I should play queen h4, but then he plays knight g6. So can we allow him queen h3? Not really. Here we go. Queen e3. Attacks c5 and prevents queen h3. And the exchange sack is still threatened. Gonna have to speed up, I'm a bit below on the clock here. Rook takes g2. Looks dangerous in some lines. Okay, he's just defending c5. Okay, exchange stack. Follow up a knight a4 to win c5. Probably best to play that now. And then threatening a6 as well. Even, yeah, he can't even play c4 now. Maybe f5, but there's not really any way for him to defend c5, so got a pawn for the exchange anyway. But we just retreat his king now. I want him to play f5 because then after knight takes c5 does knight e6. Which, you know, if his king's gonna try and escape along the back rank, it's gonna be useful. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it looks pretty dangerous now. Okay. Bishop b5 looks best. He's going to play king f7. Okay. So we can play rook c1 now. Threatening to take on c7. Well, in fact, you might have knight takes d5 at some moment. Not now though. Oh, knight g5 check might have been useful actually. You can play f4 now. Okay. This allows me queen g5. Threatening queen g7. Gonna have to hurry up. Okay, looks like a blunder. Although he's got queen takes d5 now. That's not too much of a problem. So, if he moves the knight, okay, I give him a check. Check here. And queen h7 if rook f6. Starting to look pretty good. Game over. Ah, interesting. Okay, let's have a quick replay. So it's King's Indian by transposition. So yeah, I was stopping him castling with just kind of Neanderthal setup. He sacked his pawn here. Doesn't look sound. And there's also the threat of bishop g4. Didn't see that in the game. Yeah, and then he gets his pawn back there, just with a blunder. And then rook g8. Yeah, this looks good. Queen e3 looks pretty solid. What was he trying to achieve here with queen d6? Not too sure. So then the exchange sack. This looks pretty good. And now c5 is dropping. If I mean, there's no way to defend that. And if he moves it forward, even as a sack, the c5 square being attacked is the problem. So f5, fatally weakening e6, which you know is a powerful outpost. From c5, the knight's supporting a6, so bishop takes, and then check again. And it might have been a better move there. I don't think so though. Okay, then I go here, my bishop is attacked now by the queen, and then check takes care of that. He was here. Now knight g5 check might have been useful, although he can sack the exchange back. But getting the other rook, or the only rook of mine involved, is also good. And queen g5 because he weakens the g file, and that must be a blunder. And then with the queen and knight attacking here, it's big trouble. Okay, that'll do for the first part of the video anyway. Cheers. Okay, so to take a closer look at that game, let's turn Fritz on. Opened with e4, then came g6, so the modern defense, which is pretty flexible answer to e4, is often transposing into King's Indian and Perk lines, and so on. So d4, d6, c4, bishop g7, knight c3, e6, nothing too unusual so far. Although e6 actually is slightly unusual. And, you know, in King's Indian, black usually aims for e5 after correct preparation. And this is, you know, weakening on the dark squares. It's generally not good in most setups to play e6 in combination with g6, especially in Sicilians, although obviously this isn't a Sicilian. So knight f3, knight d7, bishop e2, b6, aiming to finish it over the second bishop. Castles, h6, rook e1, bishop b7, bishop e3, knight e7 and queen d2, which, as I said, is just to stop him castling because of the pressure on h6, and he's looking very passive here already and has given me a big space advantage. And he made that worse with a6. And he should have definitely tried instead f5, but his approach appeared to be to keep the game as closed as possible at all costs. If you haven't heard of him, there was a great Slovakian player called Ujtelki who won some famous games with this setup as black, notably against Nesmetanov. A while ago I considered adopting it myself, but really it's just too passive and gives white too much space to work with. So a6, now rook ac1, aiming for b4 and c5 and just c-file activity. So knight f6, now d5, and just blocking out the bishop, and giving him the choice of whether to capture, after which the e file is going to be good for me with my rook on e1, or to close the center, which he did. And if he plays knight g4 now to attack my bishop, then I can play d takes e6, and if f takes e6, knight d4 threatening knight e6, and we see the weakening of the e6 square in the opening is going to be bad for black here. If knight d3, then knight takes e6, queen d7, knight takes g7 check, king f7, and queen takes e3, with a big advantage for white. So he played e5 instead, and I played h3 just to stop knight g4, although I regretted this weakening move later as the game unfolded. So now queen d7, apparently preparing to castle queenside. So I played b4 to discourage this, and that's pretty logical. And white has a comfortable edge here, about 3/4 of a pawn. So g5, he's going for a kingside initiative against my king. And now knight h2, which was prophylaxis against the g4 push, although it was okay to play c5 right away and crack the queenside open, because the bishop on e3 here has good pressure on the pawn at b6, making it a strong push. We can have a look at that instead. c5, and g4 is given as one of the best moves, so h takes g4, and if a knight takes g4 here, then c6 is winning a piece. So b takes c5, b takes c5, and the best for black here is bishop c8. If instead d takes c5, then not the routine bishop takes c5, but the capture on c5 here has weakened the e5 pawn, so knight takes e5 would be the move, and white has a powerful advantage. So bishop c8 is what the computer recommended, but now c6, and black is getting crushed. He has to play queen d8 here. If instead queen takes g4 and knight g5, discovering an attack on the queen is very strong for white. Knight takes e5 is also possible, but this is stronger because it traps the queen entirely. If queen h4, then simply g3. So that's no good as a defense for taking on g4. So queen d8 would be best, and now white can simply play knight h2 and remain a pawn up with a stronger position to boot. So it's looking good. So knight h2, and you played g4 anyway, which was maybe a blunder, or maybe played to open the g file. In any case, it hands white a good advantage after knight takes g4. And h5, so just knight takes f6, bishop takes f6, and bishop g5 from me now, which according to Fritz, this wasn't best. I was worried about black playing rook g8 and taking control of the king side, but apparently that wasn't much to worry about, and simply bishop d1. That's a strange computer move, I think, or rook b1, setting up some tactics on the bishop here, was better. If now rook g8, simply king h1, and white's fine, but I don't like to allow my opponents this kind of pressure on my position. So bishop g5, and now my opponent castled, which was an outright blunder, as now I can simply play bishop takes f6, which I completely missed. I was too keen to open the queen side up, and because my opponent's castled there, my rook's on c1, so it's all looking juicy, and so I just went for that. I just completely missed a free bishop, and obviously just bishop takes f6 and black's piece down for nothing. So c5, and now d takes c5, and presumably my opponent hadn't seen bishop takes f6 either, because I can play it again now. But again I missed it. I played b takes c5, threatening c6, so he can't play b5 here to try and keep things closed, and my better pawn center is serving me well here. He played b takes c5, allowing me bishop takes f6 for a third time, but once again I missed it. I think once you've missed such a move the first time around, when you're looking for moves, generally your brain doesn't notice it later, at least in Blitz games. I played instead rook b1, because I was accidentally giving him a pawn back here on c5. When I planned the c5 push, my bishop was only 3, so I would have been able to recapture here with the bishop. But opening this b file, is satisfactory compensation, although I hadn't foreseen it. And immediately exchange stack ideas are in the air, and white is now winning with an advantage of over 3 pawns. And here my opponent presumably finally saw that his bishop was attacked and played bishop takes g5, and I played the routine recapture queen takes g5. But much stronger was queen b2, and black's in dire straits on the b file. He can't move the bishop, or queen b8 is mate, so his best chance is to give his king some breathing space. Queen d6. Now comes queen takes b7, king d7, bishop takes a6, threatening bishop b5 check. So a knight g6 for some breathing space. Bishop b5 check, king e7, and the attack's not winning, but white remains well ahead. Okay, so back to the game. Queen takes g5, now rook dg8, logically taking the g file with tempo and threatening queen takes h3, unless I defend it with my queen. So queen e3 is again logical and best, and black has to play accurately now or he gets into trouble quickly. My opponent played queen d6, defending c5 but removing the threat of queen takes h3, which my earlier h3 to stop knight g4, which at that moment looked fine, has now proved to be a bad idea. And this move, queen d6, was one of the better moves, but objectively stronger was rook g6. So queen d6, and now rook takes b7, the exchange stack, which was slightly impatient on my part. This lessened my advantage, but it's always fun to sack the exchange in Blitz games, and I'm definitely going to get lots of play for it. Better was simply rook b2 with rook eb1 coming next, or knight a4 threatens to take on c5, and then b7 or a6 in conjunction with the bishop. So all manner of tactical threats, and in this position black is now forced to sacrifice if he wants to defend. But knight takes d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, but now simply f3, and white is fine and a long way ahead. So rook takes b7, king takes b7, and knight a4. Only now did I see the strength of this move. If I'd seen that move earlier, of course, it would have been better. So I will have a pawn for the exchange, because I'm winning this pawn on c5 if it pushes just bishop takes c4. And I'll have a good position with a good advantage, but it was definitely too soon to sack the exchange. He continued with f5, and this made things considerably worse due to the weakening of e6, which my knight is going to be able to land in a couple of moves. Although I missed an obvious tactic in a few moves time, which would have ended the game more quickly. I played knight takes c5 check, but also possible was bishop takes a6, where if queen takes a6, knight takes c5 wins the queen, and if king takes a6, knight takes c5, and black will have to give up the queen now. If king a7, now the only move to avoid an immediate mate, queen a3 check, forces king b8. Now rook b1 check, threatening queen a8 and mate if the king moves. So queen b6 is forced, and now knight d7 check with a huge advantage for white. So knight takes c5 check is what I've just played. He played king c8, logically getting out of the line of fire, but this makes defending much harder. Better was king a8, although white remains a long way ahead again with bishop takes a6. So king c8, and now bishop takes a6 check, which is the only move to retain an absolutely winning attack, but only if it's followed up correctly. He has to play king d8 now. If instead king b8, of course rook b1 is winning very quickly. For example, king a7, queen a3. That's going to be a forced mate in 7. So king d8, and now knight e6 check. You know, I was so keen to use the e6 outpost that I missed the obvious knight b7 check, picking up the queen. And after missing this, of course, my advantage was greatly reduced, but it still remains in the position. So king e8, king d7 was slightly better, but it's kind of academic. Bishop b5 check. You know, this was just a patzer seeing a check and giving a check. Stronger was e takes f5, with queen takes e5 coming next and going into a better endgame. And you know, black shouldn't play knight takes f5 because queen f3 favors white very strongly. Black is virtually forced to play rook f8, offering an exchange back, but now comes a bishop b5 check, king e7, rook c1, and black is falling apart. So bishop b5 check, king f7, c6 was also possible. It's roughly the same in terms of evaluation. White is, you know, one pawn up positionally, and if we look at the pawns, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against 4, so that's an advantage of 2 to me, but I'm the exchange down, so I lose 2 in that. So you know, in terms of material, the game is equal, but in terms of position, you know, white is much better here. It's not completely clear why that is. You know, black has good counterplay here, but an engine is an engine. So rook c1, which is the best move to add pressure to the black position, and my opponent reacted in a way that reduced his chances for counterplay with rook c8. And just to defend c7, I played queen g5, moving in for the kill, but better was queen g3, so that I can play after rook cg8, pretty much the only move, queen f3 with growing advantage. So queen g5, and now knight g6, which is, you know, a serious blunder. Rook cg8 was the right move here, and well, there's a couple of queen moves, but you know, it gets the pressure off the black position. So after knight g6, I can simply play e takes f5. If the knight moves, then queen g7 is going to be mate, and this is one of the best moves, as I said. Rook c6 was much stronger though, or queen takes f5, forcing king e7, and now queen takes g6, getting the material back with a completely winning attack. So e takes f5, now rook hg8. As I said, black can't move the knight or he gets mated. So now f takes g6, rook takes g6, and queen f5 check is going to pick up the rook on the next move, which obviously winning. My opponent tried to save it with rook f6, allowing queen h7, which was mate, which, you know, I saw it as a strong move, but I didn't realize it was mate given my limited time. So, you know, it was an interesting game. Let me know what you think of it, and also of this idea of playing a blitz game and giving it some deeper analysis. It's sometimes in analyzing such positions that I've found some very interesting nuances to the game itself, such as the bishop takes a6 tactic we saw earlier. You know, something I would never have usually considered. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.